The Phasing Line podcast is brought to you by generous patrons at patreon.com. If you like what we do, consider making a reoccurring donation at phasinglinepodcast.com and click that big ol' Patreon button on the website. Or if you want, you can just go straight to the Patreon page, patreon.com/phasinglinepodcast, and make a donation. No donation is too small, but we really appreciate your support of the Phasing Line. Welcome back to the Phasing Line podcast. My name is Marty Soloway, KC1CWF. This is the show where we talk about, just about everything in ham radio. The lights flashing on the towers, the microphones in the shack, rig control, remote operation, digital modes, FT8, DXpeditions, wire antennas, beverages, whatever it may be. We probably talk about it here on the show. Normally, my fearless co-host Sterling N0SSC joins me kind of sitting across the table, and we talk a little bit about ham radio, but unfortunately, Sterling was not able to join me today, and I realized that we haven't put out an episode in a long, long time. And I kind of felt bad about it. I think you guys as an audience deserve kind of a normal stream of content, and I wanted to apologize that I wasn't providing it, and I kind of actually feel a little bit guilty about it. I want to let you guys in on kind of what's going on in my life, maybe why I haven't been posting, and then maybe we can actually touch on a little bit of the ham radioing I've been doing recently. So, just to give you a little bit of a context, I am a 10th grader in high school. I'm 15, almost 16, as you may or may not know from listening to the podcast previously, but I do a lot of ham radio too, and I try and make it a big part of my life. But I think it's important to set priorities. And recently, I have not been able to make this priority, and I really want to apologize for that. I've had just a crazy busy year at school, and right now, I've been focusing on school. And that doesn't mean I'm trying to not do this. I really do want to keep talking to you, but I just haven't had the time recently to sit down and record, edit, and then publish an episode with meaningful content. So first thing first, I wanted to apologize for that because you, our really, really faithful audience, deserve better. And there's so much going on in ham radio. I mean, how is there not stuff to talk about? There is so much stuff to talk about. I just haven't had a chance to talk about it. So I wanted to come here today just to kind of give you a brief update of me, the show. So I just wanted to say the show is not going away. Sterling and I are here. We want to keep doing content. We have some interviews coming up. I talked to a few people. It's going to work out. We're not going anywhere. That's kind of thing one. Thing two is, if you haven't noticed, if you're on Patreon, we've moved to a per episode model. So that means you don't get billed monthly if we don't put out a show in, say, 3 weeks. Just when we put out a show, we charge you money. I think there's about 3 of you giving about $6 an episode, and I want to say thank you so much to you guys because we really appreciate it. And I want to apologize that we're not giving out more shows. I really like to do them. But hey, if I fail out of school, this podcast isn't going to really help much. So school has been the priority, and I want to apologize. But since our last episode, which was just kind of right after the Puerto Rico disaster struck, a lot has occurred. So I want to take a couple minutes to just kind of talk about that, think through that, and also touch on another couple things. So CQ Worldwide, I think, was kind of, we're going to work backwards in order. CQ Worldwide was not last weekend, but the weekend before. And CQ Worldwide is the biggest contest, or the biggest triad of contest, HF contest out there, right? So CQ Worldwide is broken up into 3 chunks. There's the phone portion, that's the voice, the SSB portion. That was 2 weeks ago. And then in 2 weeks from now is the Morse code, the CW portion. And about 6 weeks ago now, I believe, was the RIDI, the teletype portion. And they each feature kind of a similar format. The CW and the phone portions are both the same. Multipliers, the things that multiply the score up are countries and CQ zones. The world is broken into 40 CQ zones. And you work those, and you try and work people outside of the U.S. as much as possible to build up points, right? Well, the RIDI version, the teletype version, is a little bit different. Besides talking to people outside of the U.S., you could also talk to people inside the U.S. And states are also multipliers, things that build up your score. So that makes that contest a little bit different. But anyways, 2 weeks ago almost now was the SSB contest, which is kind of my big favorite contest of the year. I live for it. It's the one thing that gets me really excited. We had a nice station. This year I entered a category called multi-single, where it's multiple people, but a signal on the air at a time. That doesn't mean one radio. We were actually using 3 radios interlocked together, so only one could transmit at a time. One was running, calling CQ. One was on that same band, finding multipliers or other contacts, and was interlocked, meaning it was tied to the run radio, so only one could transmit at the time, and that was calling other stations. And then there was another radio that was kind of off to the side and not interlocked, called a multiplier radio. And that radio could only work multipliers on other bands, just not the band that the run radio was on. So that's any of the 5 other contest bands that the run radio wasn't on, be it 10, 15, 20, 40, 80, 160, etc. So that was a lot of fun. We did close to 4,000 contacts and close to 7 million points. So it was a lot of fun. There was 3 core operators, myself, Paul, K1XM, and Dennis, W1UE. And we operated from a mega station, Kilowatt 1 Lima Zulu, K1LZ. And Krasi, K1LZ, has a really impressive station. Stacked antennas on all bands, 40 and up, and nice wires on 80 and 160. And I gotta say, it was a lot of fun to play at a station, and we did okay. We came in the top 3 USA, it looks like. So that was certainly a blast. So I just want to touch on that. And what are your CQ Worldwide stories like? Did you get on the air? Did you make contacts? Did you have fun? I kind of wonder where you are at your ham radio journey. Are you contesting? Are you DXing? What's up with you? I always wonder about what other people are doing in the hobby. And, contesting is an important one for me. So that's one thing I wanted to touch on. There's kind of 2 other things I wanted to touch on, and then I'll wrap this up quickly. This is more of an update episode than a full-form Sterling and Marty episode, or Marty and interviewee, or Sterling and interviewee, or whatever the episodes in the future are here to look like. But I'm just giving you a little bit of an update, right? So there's the CQ Worldwide thing. I had a blast. And in a little bit less than 2 weeks from now, actually a little bit more, is the Morse code version of CQ Worldwide, right around Thanksgiving time. And I know a lot of people will be on the air for that. I'll be traveling, so I won't be able to get on. But that'll be a lot of fun for a lot of people. And so there's 2 other things I wanted to address. The first thing was the Puerto Rico disaster and the subsequent ham radio response. It was really rather interesting to see how that played out. And now the volunteers are back. They've been back for a couple weeks. And there's been a little bit of a PR event afterwards. Some volunteers said the operation did not go so smoothly, and that there were some rogue operators. And I know there's a lot of hokey pokey stuff going on down there. But it seems like all the people down there were very grateful, and the Red Cross was very grateful. But I know Gary Pierce of Ham Radio Now fame put out a very interesting article with NS0S, and NS0S, a very interesting episode of his podcast, hamradionow.tv. You can also find him on YouTube about it. And basically, Gary talked to NS0S, and NS0S was one of the people who went down there. And he ran into some issues, and then he wrote a lot on Reddit about what happened. And then it was all subsequently deleted. So I won't get into it too deeply, but you can go check out the video that Gary did with NS0S. The other thing that was going on was that kind of the other side of the story, I would say, the ARRL version of the story is being portrayed mainly in the spotlight by Val, NV9L, fiance of Whiskey Bravo 9 Zulu, contest dread in Illinois. And she also does Ham Nation and whatnot, another podcast on the internets. And she's kind of coming back with another kind of different point of view. So I'm not sure what happened down there, where the truth lies, but I know ham radio is saving lives, and I think that's what we have to remember. And with any emergency deployment, there are always things you can do better. There is no such thing as a perfect deployment. So anybody who says that, you are wrong, and I hope this is a lessons learned, and what can we take away to do it better next time. So we, the hams, can always be useful, whatever that useful means. It doesn't mean... there's a lot of people who talk about things like, is FirstNet replacing ham radio? What can we do to stop it? I hate those mindsets. Let me tell you why. It's not our job to be, always the best. Sometimes we will be the best. Sometimes we are not the best tool for the job. And in those times, I think it's important to acknowledge that and see how else we can be helpful. When you get deployed to these disaster things, you're not going as a ham radio operator. You are going as a pair of hands. If that means you do ham radio, great. You're skilled in that. That's your area of expertise. But if you have to, put Band-Aids on kids or carry water, whatever the heck you need to do, you do that because I think that's important. So just because, maybe there's something better out there than ham radio, that's okay. We don't always need it to be the best, but we should keep evolving, and keep everybody current. I guess I'd say that. And I'll kind of leave it with that on the Puerto Rico disaster. I won't get into, all the nitty gritty on that. I think enough people have covered it out there that I don't really need to. But I will say, no matter what happened down there, I do appreciate the brave people who didn't know what they were getting themselves into or knew what they were getting themselves into and jumped on a plane and answered the call for help. And I think that really says a lot about the hobby. So CQ Worldwide, Puerto Rico. What else has been going on in the world? Well, a lot of things in ham radio. There's been a lot of DX on the air lately, and that's been fun for me to chase. I'm over 200 countries worked on 20 meters now, I believe, and that's pretty cool. But here's another thing. This is kind of in a different area we haven't covered so much today, is DSTAR and digital modes and digital radio, and is digital modes and are the digital mainly FM-like modes we're using on repeaters today on VHF and UHF ham-friendly? Oh, is this a loaded question? And we've seen it for years now. Things like DMR and P25 and NXDN protocols and what else is there? I mean, I said P25, I said DMR, and there's other kind of tangents of that sort of thing. NXDN, as I said. Be it IDIS, be it Next Edge, I think is the Kenwood protocol. All these modes, and there's two modes I didn't mention here, and we'll get to them in a minute. All those modes have seen a little bit of implementation in ham radio. Actually, I'd say a fair amount. But they're not ham radio modes, which means they don't work for ham radio. Did you know that most all DMR commercial radios on the market have something called stun and kill in them, for example? Yeah, somebody can be controlling your radio, and if you're not making the code plug because you don't know how, and some guy across town is making that code plug, maybe he doesn't like you and he's going to put you on a different talk group, and then you can't talk to people and people can't hear you, but other people can have a conversation on the other time slot. All these digital modes have cool features, but they're not designed for ham radio, which means unless you're making your own code plug and you know exactly what you're doing, and you know that there's not talk groups you're being restricted from, one ham can kind of play the police officer and say, you can talk to you, but you can't talk to the other guy across town, and the other guys don't have to hear you, and we won't tell you what we're saying. And I think that makes a really uncomfortable vibe in ham radio. Now, there are some ham radio digital modes out there, and I'm skimming over a lot of the politics here. Ray Novak of ICOM America wrote a very interesting article on the ICOM America website, which was said, I think we echo the same sentiment here, and it was no way a plug for DSTAR. It was no way a sales pitch. I think it was a really, really good article, and he said, I think what we all see in person. When you kind of give this power to one person, you get the system operator of this commercial repeater system that's now been implemented for ham use. There's a lot of issues. You need those stun and those kill and those remote receive features for public safety, or P2 or EMS or business band, or, killing a radio from the field or whatever. But that's not ham radio spirit, and that's not what hams need. So I think it's important that we kind of think about what technologies we need for ham radio, and making sure that, we're not hurting feelings, because this is a hobby about having fun. And if we're not having fun, then why the heck are we doing it? That's kind of thing 2. And thing 3 to this whole thing is, but there are ham radio friendly modes. I look at things like DSTAR, which now ICOM and Kenwood in the US supports. I believe the DV radio, or whatever that's called, will support it too whenever that becomes available. Flex Radio. All these manufacturers support DSTAR. That's the based upon the Ambi vocoder designed by JARL. And I'm brushing over this pretty quickly, but that's a mode that's, for example, is designed for ham radio. There is no talk groups. There's nothing that can cause that sort of problem. And I think it's important that we realize that those modes are there for a reason, and they get rid of all those problems. And, there's things out there like system confusion. That's the Yaesu proprietary protocol. That, for people have always said ICOM owns DSTAR. That's not true. And DSTAR is not proprietary. The AMBI vocoder is, but ICOM doesn't own that. Kenwood sells DSTAR radios in the U.S. So I've always thought that would be interesting to talk about. There's lesser known systems like Fusion and whatnot, but I think DSTAR is the digital mode that's made for ham radio that I'm excited to see expand in the US, because that's the mode that can expand. And I think that's the mode that can fight against these political almost issues. Who knew that digital radio could become a political thing? I mean, I swear. And I think it's interesting to follow, and we'll see where all this goes. But I'm worried about modes like DMR and P25 and talk groups and all those scary commercial things, which are needed for commercial radios. That's not to say those are bad features. Those are very important features for commercial radios in commercial radios. But when you suddenly take commercial radios that you can't program from the front panel, and you need proprietary software that costs hundreds of dollars to program, and maybe you can't make a code plug, one guy with all the power makes the code plug, and you don't know what he's coding in there, I think that creates a problem. Anyways, rant over. Those are just my 2 cents, but I'll leave it up to you. What do you think about all this? What do you think about all this in general? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that. But, I'll wrap this one up. I'll let you go. I know you probably have more important things to do, but I wanted to let you know that we're still here and we are going to keep making content for you. So if you're not already, subscribe to the show, phasinglinepodcast.com. That's the website. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on SoundCloud, any podcatcher. You can find us in the App Store, in the podcast, whatever it's called. We have an RSS feed you can subscribe to. We are out there. Come listen to us. As always, if you like what we're doing here and you want more of it, give us some love. You can click the donate button at phasinglinepodcast.com. Check us out on Patreon. You can get there from the website or go direct patreon.com/phasinglinepodcast. Sign up to support us by episode now. Every episode we produce, you can contribute a set amount, and we really appreciate your support. I'm tripping over my words. Look at me. It's time to wrap this up. Anyways, look for more episodes in the next couple weeks. We're getting back to doing this seriously. I apologize for the delay there, but I will let you go. Have a great rest of your week. Get on, have some fun with ham radio, and I'll see you in the next one. I'm Marty Sulloway. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. 73.